Hello and thanks for watching. My name is Dan Rudolph and I am from Lone Oak High School. Tonight on the Homework Hotline, we will air students from all 5 high schools in McCracken County. Each school will field questions for approximately 15 minutes, with Lone Oak kicking it off. The members of the Lone Oak panel are, to the far left, Richard Tracy, a junior. To my direct left, Bill Johnson, a junior. And to my left, Jenny Church, a senior. My first question comes from Brad, who is in 8th grade at Heath Middle School. The question is, what is the circumference of a circle with a radius of 4 centimeters? I will take this to the board. First of all, it's necessary to define the circumference of a circle. The circumference is simply the distance around the circle. First of all, instead of just memorizing a formula for circumference, I think that we should start out by giving the definition of the number pi, which is the circumference c of any circle divided by that circle's diameter. To solve for circumference, you multiply each side through by d, which is the diameter, and you end up with pi d equals circumference. Now, diameter is the distance all the way across the circle, but in the problem, only the radius is given. The radius is given to be 4 centimeters. So 2 radiuses equal 1 diameter, so you can substitute the 2r for d and get 2 pi r equals the circumference. To solve for circumference, you simply put the 4 centimeters in place of the radius, which gives you 2 pi times 4 centimeters. Multiplying this through, you get 8 pi centimeters equals the circumference. Or in numerical value, pi, which is 3.14 times 8 equals 25.12 centimeters.
My first question comes from Mark, who is a student at Reedland Middle School. He asked, what is an organism? An organism, Mark, is any living thing.
My next question is from Michelle of Lone Oak. She's in the 11th grade, and she wants to know what is meant by Cold War. Well, Michelle, what we found is a Cold War is when countries are in extreme disagreement but not in open hostilities with each other.
My first question comes from a 7th grader at St. Mary's named Jennifer. She wants to know, what monument did Napoleon Bonaparte have built in his honor but never lived to see? Well, the name of this ark is the Ark of Triumph.
My next question is from Jacob, who's in 3rd grade, and this is a social studies question. The question is, why is New York City called the Big Apple? After researching this question, we found that New York State is the 2nd largest apple producer in the United States. So from this, we take the Big Apple because New York is one of the major apple producers in the United States.
My next question comes from Jim, who's in the 10th grade at Lone Oak High. His question is, in what castle was Lord Byron imprisoned? He was imprisoned in the castle of Chillon in France. C-H-I-L-L-O-N, Chillon.
Our next question is from John from Heath. He's in the 12th grade, and it's a geography question. He wants to know, what is the biggest state by area in the United States? Well, John, the first is Alaska, and the second is Texas.
My next question comes from a 5th grader at Farley. And John wants to know, how many times the force of gravity does the space shuttle exert on its occupants during takeoff? Well, 3 times the force of gravity is what it takes to exert them.
My next question is from Jack, who goes to Blandville High. He's in the 11th grade. The question is, why is silver nitrate used for qualitative analysis? First of all, I will explain what qualitative analysis is. Qualitative analysis is when you have an unknown solution, and in that solution you're trying to find what chemicals are present. And silver nitrate is used if you have halogens in the solution. A halogen is one of the elements, chlorine, fluorine, iodine, or bromide. Each of these elements has a -1 charge. The reason why you put silver nitrate in there is because silver has a +1 charge. The silver will bond with the element, the halogen element in the solution, and it will precipitate out of the solution, which means it will settle at the bottom. And by that fashion, you can tell what element is in the solution.
My next question is from Jim, who's in the 10th grade at Lone Oak. I'm sorry, we've already had that question. Okay, Brian, who's in the 9th grade at Lone Oak, asked, on the atom table, 8E is on the outer shell, all the elements except palladium, which has 16. Why is this? Well, palladium is in the 4D sublevel, so it... Can you explain this? Skip it. Okay. We have to skip that one. Okay. Sarah, who's in Lone Oak Middle School, asked, what is 25 divided into 4,150? I'll have to go to the board to work this one. $25 into 4,150. First, 25 will go into 41 one time. And 5 from 11 is 6, and 2 from 1 is 1. Then you bring down the 5. 25 will go into 165 6 times. And you have 10 left over from here, and you bring down the next 0. 25 will go into 100 4 times. There's no remainder, so the answer is 164.
My next question is from Marion. It's an English question, and she's in the 10th grade, and she wants to know, what is the name of the book by Edgar Allan Poe which contains all his detective stories? Well, Marion, let's see. It says that The Murders in the Rye Morgue is the name of his detective stories, and he is known as the father of modern detective stories.
My next question comes from Mark, an 11th grader at Lone Oak High. He wants to know, was George Washington elected by popular vote? No, he wasn't. He was elected by the representatives of all the states.
My next question comes from Joe, who is a 9th grade at Heath Elementary. It is a math question, so I'll take it to the board. The question is, what are the factors of x cubed plus 27 equals 0? When you want to know what the factors are, this is saying, what will this third-degree expression break up into? First of all, a math problem like this is more or less a trial and error process. Since the problem is in third degree, you're going to break it into 2 parts. One will have to be a second degree, and the other will have to be a first degree. You start this just by putting an x here and an x squared there. And you more or less just experiment. I'm going to put in plus 3 here because negative 3 is a factor in this problem. And once the problem is worked out, it equals that. You might think that this could be broken up again since it is a x squared term. But if you use the... anyway, it won't.
My next question comes from John, who's in the 9th grade at Paducah Tillman High School. He asked, how do you find the area of a triangle? The equation for the area of a triangle is area equals 1/2 times the base times the height. And that's only for a right triangle.
My next question is from Jason. He's from Reedland, and he's in the 3rd grade, and he wants to know, if you have a name that ends with S, how would you show ownership? Well, let's take the name Jones, for instance. It would be Jones apostrophe. You wouldn't add an S because it already ends in one.
My next question comes from Eric, a 10th grader at St. Mary High. He wants to know, does the United States have any territorial claim to the moon? Well, Eric, no, the United States doesn't, because shortly after the first moon landing, the United States signed a treaty that denied them any territorial claim.
Cooper, she's in the 3rd grade. She asked, what is 25 times 2? I'll have to go to the board for this problem. $25 times 2. First, you multiply this 2 times the 5, and you get 10. You carry the 1 over. 2 times 2 is 4, and you add the 1 that you carried over, and that's 5. So your answer is 50. 25 times 2 is 50.
Our next question comes from Randy. He goes to St. Mary's, and it's in the 11th grade. And he wants to know how many days are in a leap year. Well, Randy, there's 366 days in a leap year.
My next question comes from a 10th grader at St. Mary High School. He wants to know who was Ronald Reagan's first presidential secretary. Well, his first presidential secretary was James Brady.
My next question is from Marty. He goes to Morgan Elementary School, and he's in the 3rd grade. And he wants to know, how hot is lava? Well, it says here that it's between 1,650 degrees and 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, or between 900 and 1,200 degrees Celsius. Oh, no one. Well,
My next question is from Eric, who's an 8th grader at St. Mary High School. The question is a math question, so I'll take it to the board. The question is, what percent of 368 is 4? To start this reading equation, you have to put in a variable. I'm going to substitute x equals the percentage. To do this, you say 4 equals what percent, which is x, times the 368. You're trying to solve for x, so therefore you need to isolate the x by dividing each side by 368. You get 4 over 368 equals the percentage. Once this is multiplied out, 368 divided into 4, the answer is 0.01086. And this is the answer.
our next question is from Heather. She goes to Lonoc Elementary School, and it's a math question, and she's in the 1st grade. And she wants to know what 40 times 10 is. I have to go to the board for this. Okay. Where's pens? All right. Stealing all my pens. I'll get you. Okay, Heather. 40 times 10. All you need to do is multiply this. 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. Bring down your 0. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 4 is 4. And you need to add them together. And the answer is 400.
My next question comes from a 9th grader at Reedland. His name's Clark. He wants to know, where do we get our modern calendar? Well, many ancient civilizations contributed to our calendar up to this day, but its basic form may be related back to the Romans.